Hello, a few days ago I went on a field trip. Today I'm going to show you the result of the trip. Are you curious? Before we dive into the computer, let's review a little bit. I think the app did quite well. Of course there were a few bugs as I already mentioned during the field test, but overall things worked. It was uploading the offline images, it was doing that in the background, everything worked, no data get lost, there were just a few user interface glitches. And that's what I've been addressing so far. So I'm good with the result of the test. Let's go and have a look at the computer. Now here we're in Xcode again, and let's first start the app to see what we have at this point and what is done on the user interface. It's launching. Okay, what we see here is the trip. It's called Day Trip Delft. It's from last Sunday, and we see some images. Those are the most recent images of the trip, and we see the last written message of this trip at the old railway station. Now these images and these message here are actually updated with the Firebase function we wrote back in episode 6. I modified it slightly, but it's still the same function in this core concept, so please check that video out as well. Now if we continue here, we see the trip and we can scroll through the trip, and it's currently in reverse date order, so the most recent one is on top. We see the header nicely disappearing, we see it's Sunday. In this case we have a post with 3 images. We can move on, we have a post with 1 image. We see the images in full size. So I built it this way that we always keep the normal aspect ratio and the images in full size. So even if there are, in this case, 3 square ones, then they are cropped as squares. But if there's 2 in landscape, then they're shown as landscape, 2 square ones, and 1 portrait image again. Now these are actually the images that we took during the trip. That is also the scenery you might recognize from the field trip, and that's what we did. Now what is the most important thing we had to do here? That was actually creating the layout of the images. As you can see, this is a table view, and the cells all have different sizes, so we needed to use the automatic resizing of table view cells. And for that, because inside the table view we use a collection view, and that collection view needed to resize depending on the aspect ratios of the images. So let's look at the code for that briefly to give you an idea what was the work that had to be done before that was done. So let's go there. That is the story header, the story table view cell where that actual work is being done, and that happens here. So I have to calculate the media sizes, and there's a little bit of logic whether you have an odd number or an even number. In case of an odd number, we always want to set the first image as full width, and with all even images we don't need to do that. And then we calculate some sizes here based on the frame width. Now one thing we did when we created the images, I store the aspect ratio of the image, so I can use the aspect ratio that is stored in Firestore without having to retrieve the actual image. So I can pre-calculate the sizes with some logic here, and I append that to the media sizes. And of course, if I know all the individual media sizes, I also know the total height, and that height is set as a constant on a constraint of that collection view. Here on top we see that is the collection view. The collection view, the media view, and we set the media height is the constraint of that collection view. And with that we have automatic resizing table view cells. And all we need to do here is in the collection view data source, we of course set the image, and what is more important here, in the flow layout we can set the media size of that particular image. So as you can see, it looks nice, but in the end it wasn't that much work. All we needed to do is calculate the proper dimensions of the images based on the aspect ratio of the images that we have and that we stored in the data store before we retrieve the actual image. Because if you have to retrieve the actual images, what will go asynchronously, you cannot really make the table look nice the way you want to have it. And that is the main thing that we had to do here. A similar thing we had to do for the trip. So if we go back to the simulator, I will quickly show you that as well. Here we have 4 images of different aspect ratios, and they nicely show full width on the screen. But for instance, if your trip just started, you might have 1 or 2 images, and then we still want to look it nice. So also there we use a little bit of a trick to resize to calculate the images. So we know what is the recent media, that is a collection, we know how many, we know how wide that media view, what is again a collection view is, and then we can again use the ratio to calculate the actual width, what is the width of it, and resize the cell in height. And this way we have a very nice looking screen. So even if there's multiple trips, the one with the most recent update will automatically move on top, done by that Firebase function that we wrote earlier, and you will see the latest images here, and if you zoom you go nicely to the full view of the trip and go through. Now of course there's still a lot of things I want to do. I'm going to do something about the font sizes, because if you remember my complaint I did in the introduction that many applications have too small letters, so I want to implement the automatic resizing based on your iOS settings. I also need to do some things like editing and deleting a trip if it's necessary, but the start is there. Now I hope you recognize some of the nice pictures. It was a beautiful day for the road trip, I wish, for the field trip. And yes, they also come back in the video, and I try to make it a little bit entertaining. I'm happy with the results what we have so far, and I will slowly improve on the user interface and make it nicer and easier to use. And of course I'll keep you updated in the next videos. Now you've seen the app in action, and it starts to look like a real app. It's moving forward, and that is of course the goal. We'll continue working on it, and we're making it prettier and better to use, and of course we'll add heaps more functionalities. But the first basis is there now. So if you like this video, please subscribe, click the bell icon to get notified for the next video, and I will continue making on videos on the progress. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.